Achiku, what are the focal points today? The federal government has pledged skill development to deepen $420 billion economy. Annual UK study expenses hits $2.5 billion amid forex scarcity. Federal government borrows 24 trillion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria amid fiscal risk. And Ondo, Lagos, Abia lead poverty reduction charge. Details now. The federal government has pledged to continue skills acquisition programs across Nigeria to deepen the economy, estimated at $420 billion. Speaking at the ITF NECA Technical Skills Development Project Stakeholders Dialogue Forum in Abuja, the Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Mariam Katagum, said nations confronted the challenges of poverty, soaring unemployment, and related challenges with skills acquisition, noting that Nigeria must do the same. Katagum said though agencies like the Industrial Trust Fund had taken advantage of relevant government policies to train hundreds of thousands of Nigerians through various skills intervention programs, more still needs to be done for the rapid growth and development of the nation's economy. The Director General ITF, Joseph Ari, said the ITF NECA Technical Skills Development Project was in response to the outcome of a joint survey that was carried out by the agency and NECA, which revealed, among other things, skills mismatches and drastic shortages in many sectors of the economy. He said the number of participating organizations had moved from 6 to 89, noting that over 56,597 skilled technicians had been trained and secured high-paying quality jobs or set up on their own. Now, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, has said annual foreign exchange outflow and study related to the UK has hit to about $2.5 billion as visa applications increase. He also said the official foreign exchange receipt from crude oil sales into the official reserves of the country had dried up, but that the CBN had introduced measures to boost forex earnings through non-oil export, which was already yielding results. Emefiele spoke at the 57th Annual Bankers Dinner of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria in Lagos on Friday night. He said the program was fundamentally devised to innovatively tackle the fundamental problem associated with the repatriation of non-oil export proceeds. So far, he said it had recorded and continues to record resounding success with the RT200 program. Inflows through this program in 2022 rose to about $1.6 billion and could surpass $2.5 billion by year end. Now, the federal government has borrowed 6.31 trillion CBN from 17.46 trillion naira in December 2021 to 23.77 trillion naira in October 2022. Now, the 23.77 trillion naira owed the Apex Bank by the federal government is not part of the country's total public debt stock, which stood at 42.84 trillion naira as of June 2022. Now, the Debt Management Office disclosed that the public debt stock only includes the debts of the federal government of Nigeria and 36 state governments and the Federal Capital Territory. Ways and Means Advances is a loan facility through which the CBN finances shortfalls in the government's budgets. According to Section 38 of the CBN Act 2007, the Apex Bank may grant temporary advances to the federal government with regard to temporary deficiency of budget revenue at such rate of interest as the bank may determine. However, the CBN has said via its website that the federal government's borrowing from it through the Way and Means Advances could have adverse effects on the bank's monetary policy to the detriment of domestic prices and exchange rates. The World Bank had in November last year warned the Nigerian government against financing deficits by borrowing from the CBN through the Ways and Means Advances, saying this put fiscal pressure on the country's expenditure. Now, despite warnings from experts and organizations, the federal government has kept borrowing from the CBN to fund budget deficits. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority, LASRERA, has concluded plans to host the third edition of Lagos Real Estate Marketplace Conference and Exhibitions. The special advisor to Lagos State Governor on Housing, Mrs. Toke Benson Awoyinka, disclosed this via a statement in Abuja. She said that the third Lagos Real Estate Marketplace Conference and Exhibition is to hold from Tuesday to Wednesday, 7th December in Victoria Island. Benson Awoyinka added that discussions at the event will be in form of a town hall meeting which will focus on the Lagos real estate emerging markets mitigating potential risk. She buttressed further on the need for stakeholders in the real estate market to protect the sector from imposters whose actions portend great risk to the real estate market in the country. She, however, went further to say that the Lagos State government will sustain the platform of the annual conference for the stakeholders to brainstorm on how to ensure that real estate business transactions meet the smart city vision and themes of the state government. And finally, on the business report at 3, poverty eradication programs implemented in Ondo, Lagos, Abia and Anambra states have started to bear fruit as they have the least numbers of poor people in Nigeria. The 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Index report, which is by the National Bureau of Statistics, discloses. Now, the MPI is a measure of poverty that reflects the share of possible deprivations that poor people experience. Its values range from 0, which indicates no poverty, to 1, which means universal poverty and deprivation. The 2022 NBS MPI results showed that Nigeria currently has 133 million people who are multidimensionally poor, representing 63% of the nation's total population of 211 million individuals. With an MPI score of 0.257, a quarter of the poor people in Nigeria suffer all possible deprivations. Multidimensional poverty is higher in rural areas where 72% of people are poor compared to 42% of people in urban areas. Approximately 70% of Nigeria's population live in rural areas, yet these areas are home to 80% of poor people. The intensity of rural poverty is also higher, 42% in rural areas compared to 37% in urban areas. The report also disclosed that 65% of poor people, 86 million, live in the northern part of the country, while 47 million or 35% live in the southern part of Nigeria. Now, Ondo State had an MPI score of 0.095 and has the least number of poor people in the country who suffer all possible deprivations. Its MPI score indicates that poor people in the state suffer just 9.5% of all possible deprivations compared with 25.7% for the entire country. While Lagos State, which is Nigeria's commercial capital, scored 0.101 on the MPI scale and is the second state with the least poor people in the country. Its MPI score implies that poor people in the state experience just 10.1% of all possible depreciations. Also, Abia State scored an MPI 0.101 and thus tied with Lagos State's. Anambra State scored an MPI 0.109, while Ekiti State scored an MPI 0.125, indicating that poor people in Anambra State experience 10.9% of all possible deprivations, while the poor people in Ekiti State experience 12.5% of all possible deprivations. Also, it means that policies and implementations could be responsible for these factors. And just before we wrap up the business report at 3, let's take a look at the focal points. You heard that the federal government has pledged skills development to deepen $420 billion economy. Annual UK study expenses hits $2.5 billion amid forex scarcity. Federal government has borrowed 24 trillion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria amid fiscal risk. And Ondo, Lagos, Abia lead poverty reduction charge. And that is a wrap on the business report at 3 and Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachikuji. Follow our social media handles at VOP 93 FM. Good afternoon and thank you for listening.
Did you want to know more on viable product trends?